afternoon. It's Celeste of Astrology by Celeste. Yes, it is. Sorry, I'm like, this day I've been running around like a chicken, so I'm a little discombobulated, but I'm so excited for this conversation. Hi, Andrea. Welcome, welcome. Let me welcome you up. Yeah, you should be able to join me now. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Hello. Let me share this video. I think okay, anyone watching can see that you're watching. Okay, hello. Nice to
Hi,
see
how
you
are
again.
you doing?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yes, I am. It's
Thank you
been
so
cool.
much for having me.
Oh, well, thank you for coming. I'm so excited for you to share your knowledge on remediation with everyone. I think it'll be really inspirational to people. So, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay, well, my name is Andrea Gehrz. I've been an astrologer for about 24 years, and at this point in my career, I probably focus on astrological remediation, as I notice that makes happy astrologers. I have read a lot of the ancient Greek texts. I know Hellenistic astrology like the back of my hand, but I guess what the special piece I can offer is this remediation piece. I wrote this
Yeah.
book on it. So, Astrological Remediation, a guide for the modern practitioner. It's a textbook, basically. So, yeah, that's what people have been reading,
Yes.
essentially.
Yeah. People love it. So, why don't you explain what it is? What is astrological remediation?
Sure. And I didn't invent the term. I would say maybe I popularized it in the West, but in Indian astrology, they've been doing remedies for thousands of years. They use gems and pilgrimages to sacred sites, and praying to certain gods and mantras and things. So, what it is anything we have in the chart that's a struggle. If we have a hard aspect, a moon square Mars, Sun conjunct Saturn, remediation would remedy those things in the chart. There's a million ways to remedy something like the if we look at theory and methodology, there's theory behind how we approach it, but then the methodology is endless. Some people are flower essence remedy people, some people are massage therapists, some people are psychotherapists. I think the key to astrological remediation, which I'll call AR, is basically that you can see the chart and see the problems in the chart, and then you're trying to remedy from that position.
Oh, I love that. So, there's a couple of the tenets to think about. Like I have Sun conjunct Saturn, so
Okay, interesting. Well, let's see. There's a lot of ways to
yeah.
attack. Let's take that Sun Saturn. Let's say first of all, we look at remediation people as like auto mechanics. We don't necessarily cause a problem in the chart. So I wouldn't necessarily say to you, Celeste, that means that you're going to have problems in life, because an auto mechanic doesn't tell you what's wrong with your car. You tell the mechanic what's wrong with your car. Like,
Mhm.
so, if you told me I'm having problems expressing myself, I feel under manifested, I feel too shy, or then I would say, okay, let's start remedying those problems, from a Sun Saturn perspective. But what sign is your Sun Saturn?
In
Taurus.
Taurus.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. So yeah,
What
maybe
about worry unnecessarily about security and
there
safety?
you go. Okay, that's a really good one, Taurus. So, I'm kind of a mechanic, so I do actually think of things physically. Like, I remember years of watching my clients have transits to their Saturn, and they would do the same Saturn theme over and over. And I thought there's got to be a way to actually fix this. And so we actually go in mechanically a lot and fix things. So anyway, a Sun Saturn conjunction. Or in Taurus, Taurus lives in this part of the body, so it's the ear, nose, and throat. Taurus people, they like their food. They like to, money. Why is money a Taurus thing? Well, think about if you need to feed yourself, right? I need money to feed myself. That would be like the idea there. But with Saturn and Taurus, we notice that there's a tension in Taurus area. Anywhere we have Saturn, we can look in the spinal column and find tension there. So we actually, would say that you're built to be a Taurus, but you're kind of like you're like, I'm here to make money, but I'm kind of tight on that top. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. Like, so I might actually go in there and have a massage therapist fascially reconstruct your spine to let that chakra move a little bit easier, so you wouldn't be so clenchy about, resources and things like that. That's kind of advanced. People are like, well, how am I supposed to know what to do? That's a whole class,
Yeah.
right? Like we look into these things called dermatomes, which are these electromagnetic swaths of nervous tissue, and like I worked with an astrokinesiologist for years, and like, so you don't have to remedy things physically. Like I think we can also remedy it just ontologically, of saying like, why was Celeste built this way? Well, perhaps she's here to be a little tense on resources, so that over time she can be one of the best, at building a steady, stable resource center for herself. Like if you continually like, get stressed about a topic, then you're going to build and build and build. And I see that with your channel. Like you build really systematically your astrology practice. And I think that would be a very Taurus Saturn endeavor, just like building almost like a farmer, like get up and till the fields. And, farmers don't quit. They just keep going. The animals need to be fed, So I think we can look at like the best version of a sun Saturn. We could say you're a very refined Taurus. You're a very like a Taurus boss. Like as you get older, you're like a total boss at resources. And we could also look at like Saturn and Taurus is really good at not skimping on resources, but saving or being thrifty. Like, so if you're kind of tense about resources, then maybe you don't spend a lot, or like making money by spending very little money might be a Saturn and Taurus gift. So a lot of it's that we look at the gifts of an
Yeah.
aspect. Sometimes we handle it physically. We could use a gemstone. I know this is a really long-winded answer, but
No, this is
okay.
great. You're like, yeah, and I'm learning about astrokinesiologists. I did I gotta find one of those. I think that would be so cool.
Yeah, there is this book, Astrosomatica, which I
Oh,
wrote with Casey Cardoso, the astrokinesiologist, and
ah,
we talk all about dermatomes in here and the body systems of all the. It's basically a physical astrology book, but yeah, so you can have an astrokinesiologist in this book, but basically, the other thing would be like stone remedies. Let's say, how would you remedy that? Well, first of all, placement of stones is a big thing. We would want to place the stone on the Taurus area to, remind that Saturn and Taurus to relax. So first we would want a relaxing stone, because Saturn can be too tense, right? So maybe a Venusian stone or a Jupiterian stone could work if you're trying to build abundance, right? Like
yeah.
we might, but we might want to wear it in the Taurus region. So maybe on the ears, because that's ear, nose, and throat or Taurus. So maybe huge Jupiterian earrings on the Taurus ears would remind you like abundance, 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 and I think stones do provide intention setting, which helps us remember. But some people say they actually alter the aura.
Ooh.
You could
Like,
also
what would
wear,
be a Jupiterian stone and a Venusian
okay,
stone?
I'm not a stone expert, I'm a
Okay,
theoretician. So I might, if I were figuring out this problem, I'd go on and Google like Venus stone
okay.
or, you know, um, Jupiter stone. But like usually
Like
Jupiter
rose
stones are orange.
quartz to me feels like a Venus stone.
Absolutely,
Self
yeah, because
love,
it's
self worth.
yes.
Yes. Mm.
And I think a Jupiterian stone would probably be orange or,
Okay.
you know, something. It could be something that looks like Jupiter. You can actually wear Jupiter earrings that say Jupiter. You know, it could actually be the planet of Jupiter on an earring. Or it could be like an orange stone,
I
probably.
have a Dalmatian stone here, and
Whoa.
that feels Jupiterian to me.
Okay.
It's like joyful, it's joyful energy.
Nice.
Mm.
There's also, in palmistry, if you look at, there's the planets on the palm. So you could
Yeah.
also wear a Jupiter stone on your Saturn finger,
Ah,
or something like that. So
that is so cool. So you could use stones, you can use body work. What are some other techniques?
totally, yoga is one that a lot of yogis are basically running energy. If energy stopped up, with your Saturn, you might get energy
What
stopped, or they call it those
connect?
losers. Yeah, exactly. Like Saturn and Tauruses get really tense right there. So,
Yeah.
there could be yoga poses that get the energy flowing through that. Now, that would be a practice we have to do daily. One of the reasons I'm a big auto mechanic and I go in there physically is I don't like the person to have to like over and over remedy the thing over and over. It's just like get it. And the way we do it is the kinesiologist would hit it for 12 weeks in a row. So she would do like fascial reconstruction on your fascia for 12 weeks, and then all those years of building up transits to it, like, oh my God, it would totally relax. So Rolfing is a good one. But there are other ones like, well, one thing I will say is this is transit based. A lot of people think you get a stone and then you just wear it all the time. Well, that's that's a good idea, except people aren't really linear. And though we would also want to really remedy it when we have transits to that Saturn, So perhaps, the sun goes over your Saturn's your birthday and you're worrying about, money. We're like, oh, gotta wear those Jupiter stones. Like, gotta remember. And so it's I mean, I prescribe remedy on transit all the time. Like, same with the massage therapy. It's like, let's say we worked out that Saturn in Taurus and we got it loose. Well, then maybe every Mars transit to it, we would want to schedule you a massage in that pocket of time. So if you're aggravated there, we would have someone relax you at that point. And so, I think scheduling things to parts of the chart or transits is a big form of remedy we use.
Oh, that's fantastic. I will keep that in mind about like so when Mars is coming to square or conjunct or oppose my
Yeah.
Saturn, this is a time I need to be extra careful about or do something to oh, that's
Yeah.
so cool. What about like Venus Mars? Like how do you help people with Venus Mars
Okay.
issues?
Venus Mars. Okay, so that would be, let's say we had a Venus Mars square.
Hmm.
What's the problem there? Well, I think Venus is love and creativity, and Mars, it would be surging of passion. So with people who have a Venus square Mars, sometimes they can go into these manias where they do things like sleep with someone outside their relationship, or they get hypersexual or something like that,
Hmm.
which isn't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, we look at a lot of ways to walk through transits. I'm kind of a mega manifestation artist where I'm like, oh, mega manifest that square, like that mania, go after it, but maybe don't go after it in a way that's detrimental to your life. Can you go after your partner when you're in a hypersexual mania, instead of going outside the relationship or something like that. But
Oh,
the point is that squares are hard for people to understand because they surge. Everyone thinks they're bad, but they're just surgers. In fact, Vedius Valens, the ancient astrologer, he said they are anomalous, which is what makes them hard. Like if Saturn hits a square, we get like compression for a whole
yeah.
year of that square. But if Jupiter hits it which happens every 3 years, we get a mania surge. So it's like, so I think the first thing with squares is to time to them. And really, you want to get, like when Mars hits a Venus Mars square, basically you're going to get a mania. And that happens every 6 months. In manias, people feel like they can do anything and they're invincible and all this stuff. And it's like, well, your soul is actually invincible right now, so use that energy. I'm not a big repressionist of energies, but with Venus Mars, like maybe we channel it into an artistic project, right? Like you're going to have passion about creativity and love and things like that. So can we plan to channel, depending on the signs, what kind of art project would depend on the signs and houses, but
Well, we
um,
just had Venus in Virgo, square Mars and Gemini was yesterday. So why don't we use that
oh,
for if anybody watching has that in their chart?
okay, cool. Yeah, that T square was intense. With the Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Venus T square is, yeah, and so okay, well, the the Venus square Mars portion of it, Mars and Gemini would heat up the throat chakras of mankind because, and I say mankind because it's happening for everyone. Mars is in Gemini for all of us, right? And so when I'm thinking about these things, I get into the machine of the person. I'm like, what would a hot throat chakra look like? Mars and Gemini. I can't stop talking. So it's like we see a lot of talking, right? Writing, typing, texting, emailing, and then the Venus and Virgo would maybe bring a kind of perfection standpoint to it, like say things perfectly or say it the right way, or um, or maybe we could turn that around and say it's a good thing, like Venus and Virgo can polish up your writing or polish up what you're saying. You know, um, so maybe if you're doing it, if we want to channel that into art, we could say, write something and then edit it at the same time because that Venus and Virgo wants to, polish it up. So it's like write an article and edit it. It's a mania, so you have a lot of energy. Go ahead and do it all, at that time. Yeah, that does that help?
That I went on a writing tear last night after the convention, like where I just got to. Well, I think what I'm doing, I may not be doing what I'm doing, but I think I'm kind of like channeling the conscious collective energies or whatever into something.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the Saturn piece of that T square?
Yes. Please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so I think, Saturn and Pisces is looking at, like how can we be beautiful in our consciousness? How can we refine our thinking so that consciousness is, healed? Or, when I think of Pisces, I think of like the water of everyone at once, like global water. So when I think of Saturn in Pisces, I think of divinity, like getting good at prayer, reading the Course in Miracles, studying how to really clean energy for the global collective all at once. So maybe some of this thinking that we're doing with that Mars and Gemini is about like how to clean and clear like big things that are happening. You know, I know a lot of people are tripping on the election, so maybe people are doing a lot of work to clean out some of the trauma from that election stuff. And as they have these political conversations, they're moving towards a brighter future. Like maybe they're saying, like maybe this thing is leading Kamala into office. I won't get into politics, but my point is
Yeah.
like anything that we're talking
Leave
about.
that to me to get myself in trouble.
Okay, yeah. I'm not a politics person. But I do know that anything we're talking about right now, we could be using to clean and
Yeah.
clear the subconscious.
Yeah.
So what we're doing at the Moira Press is tons of work on manifestation and getting the right conversations about things. And, I'm getting into all kinds of trouble at the Moira Press because I'm asking people to have like these kind of clean manifestation conversations about these hard topics. And it's like doing soul surgery, essentially. Um, but not every remedy is beautiful. Surgery is actually quite. It's something.
It
And like when the surgeon does
hurts when you
surgery.
get cut with that knife. Even if the intention is for you to heal something, or something is needs to be taken out, the process is difficult.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so I think we can look at this T square as a time of kind of like soul surgery on the consciousness level of like we're removing nits from, the consciousness of mankind and saying like how can we have a brighter future really.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just did a class at the Moira Press on conflict theory and astrology, and really what we dealt with a lot was Mars and what to do about Mars. Because, you think Mars transits are easy to walk through, but it's really a philosophical conundrum because it's like, do you avoid people till the Mars transit's over? Do you go at the situation that's bothering you? Like, because we would say Mars heats up people from the inside out. It makes
Mhm.
them full of iron. And when people are full of iron, they get really cranky. And so, like, warriors are full of iron, and women. No offense, but before like we menstruate, we're full of iron. Like, there's just a lot. PMS is like passionate Mars syndrome is what I call it. But basically,
I love
you
that.
know, yeah, but I think people who are cranky are hard to deal with because it's an undercurrent coming from inside them. And so we dealt with rebuke, which is like the Christian theory of taking conflict to someone's face and saying, um, like this, you upset me, and this is what I think. And then there's forbearance, where you aggressively give it up to a higher power, and you say, God, handle this, and like so. Dealing with Mars isn't always easy. I mean, how do you deal with Mars transits? What's your philosophy?
Uh, Being aware that they're coming, and like for what I recommend people do is like doing some grounding for yourself, and like feeling in through your body about where the tension is. Because if you're not prepared, if they come, this is when we can have unexpected outbursts, or like problems coming in. But a way to, how I guess I would call it, my remediation, if depending on where it is in the chart, I would get insights into, okay, these are the areas of life where, based on the house, where you may be feeling extra tension, aggression, anger, or anger coming at you, irritation, all those Mars words. And depending on how they're looking at their chart, like tying in how it may show up in the different ways, and talking with them through what are the best ways for you to dispel your energy in a productive and healthy way. Like exercise is one of the best ways to moderate Mars, I think, whether it's just going for a walk, or even
Yes.
more like pumping yourself up
Yeah.
to your sweating.
Oh my Yeah, you're a good remedy person. I remember I had a student, and she was like, she learned remediation, and she was mad at another student in class, and she came to class and said, I gotta go. I'm in a Mars transit. I gotta go do 100 push-ups before class. Like it basically was like I gotta purge the Mars before I get sit in this classroom. So I actually am. You're actually very good because that purging Mars energy is a big one. It's just like taking the dog to the park and having them run.
Yeah.
It's like running Mars energy. Like if we get super martial charts, a lot of them are football players or athletes and all. So they do actually need to purge that energy.
Because I feel like if you don't handle your Mars well, it could show up as you being the one that's short-tempered or whatever, cranky, whatever. But it also can be like outside of yourself, these people coming, like drawing them in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I'm more of and this is something I've developed over 15 years of working with
Yeah.
Mars transits.
Yeah.
I'm a kind of go at it and do the work of the Mars transit person. Like avoiding the Mars is to me wasting an opportunity at go moving through. Like I read this book on conflict and it said that when people are in conflict, they're more creative and more productive. And good managers actually are supposed to let their group have conflict. Of course, you can have, toxic conflict or not, but actually letting people walk through conflict is productive and creative. And so
The best
I've learned
relationships are when people can be in conflict and work through it rather than just avoid it or yeah.
Well, I think it's really good to negotiate containers for Mars. Like if we have partners or co-conspirators, and if we're working with somebody over time, we want to negotiate. Like what do we do on a Mars transit? Like what is our style? And then you can make a container for conflict, and then when those come up, some people like transparency, some people like to avoid it, and I think getting an agreement really can waylay a lot of problems, honestly.
Yeah, that is so, yeah, that's such great advice. Yeah. Oh, here's someone, Zoom, the stars has Saturn opposite moon in Gemini. So like
Okay.
Saturn moon,
Okay.
that can be a really,
Is the moon in Gemini or the Saturn in Gemini?
Saturn, I think Saturn's opposite their moon in moon. It says Saturn opposite moon in Gemini, fifth house. So
Okay, so
that's what it says.
let's work on that one. So let's say that the moon's in Gemini and the Saturn's in Sagittarius. What might be some of the problems we see with that? Now, I'm not trying to create problems that don't exist, but we're just working theoretically here. So, moon in Gemini is very talkative. It processes things verbally and cerebrally. So that's what the emotional process of a moon in Gemini looks like. So, writing in the journal is very effective for moon in Gemini. Talking things out, having a team of people you can, do the work with and talk to. But the Saturn in Sag, that would be, there's some feeling of being cut off from people. Like Saturn feels like constrictive, or like the ancient flavor of Saturn is astringent, where you eat something and you kind of pucker up. Which that's Saturn energy, right? So if you have a moon Saturn, it's like you're trying to be emotional, but you kind of feel like held back or boundaried as you're trying to process. So maybe this person has transit to it and they think, I want to process verbally, but I'm afraid, or I'm afraid of what will happen, or I feel like this is restricting my freedom because it's Saturn and Sag. So maybe they can't, let's see, what would that be? Saturn and Sag, like you can't move around. Your hip is tight, so you can't walk around the park, but you got to verbally process. Geez, so these are even hard for me. Like if the person doesn't tell me what the problem is, I'm like, what is the problem? But yeah, I would say like having an overly boundaried moon, or cutting people out as opposed to working through emotional stuff. Like, and so what is the remedy there? Now the way I do this in readings, and a lot of my students end up doing it, is I would go to the Saturn section of the book, and I actually would read like, what does Saturn want? It's like, oh, it wants to create structure, create boundaries, experience stress, and manifest a better life. Okay, so maybe this person emotionally needs structure, where maybe they're not trying to push people away, but they need structure, right? So like maybe having relationships that are really structured works for their moon Saturn. Like somebody they see weekly on Monday nights every week, that they can then process because they feel like the container is safe there. Something like, and so then I look at like Saturn remedies, like working, time alone to continue working, persistent effort. So making effort at relationships as opposed to cutting people out, saying I'm willing to do the work on this emotional thing.
I was
Persist.
just thinking, like maybe if they and their partner have, okay, we're going to meet every Sunday morning, and then we're going to talk about the difficult, like any issues in the relationship, and have a container for that conversation because it may make the Moon and Gemini person really uncomfortable. Yeah,
Beautiful.
and
Yeah,
like
and
that.
like if we were being really technical, like the Saturn Sagittarius, right? They can't walk around their hips tight. I mean, I go into the
Mhm,
physical form, like,
mhm.
so then maybe we could say, what container can they drive around in the car, as a passenger in a car and talk with their partner every Sunday morning? Like just adding in the
Oh,
Sag piece, right? Of like, I'm
movement.
traveling and I'm talking or something, so a really good remedy is usually something like this. It's kind of intricate and it just resonates with the person. And usually when we're trying to remedy an aspect, is it something that happens right away? Well, it can, like in a reading, and you sound like a really good remedy artist, but it's like you can remedy something by offering a few ideas. What I find with the advanced astrologers that we work with is they end up finding their own remedies. So what they do is we watch transits to the moon Saturn for a few rounds, and just fade it out. We're like, what happens? Okay. So let's say the sun hits it or the moon hits it and they're like, oh, I felt so boundaried, I felt so alone, or all these things. Well, then we say, okay, on the next transit to this, let's write a list of 20 things that would feel good to you at this time. That's what we call symbolic substitution, where we substitute
Ooh.
activities that feel good, right? So maybe they tried the driving around and talking thing that you suggest, right? And they're like, oh, I loved that one. We're like, okay, we're adding that to your list of things that feel good on transits to this, And so we end up trying to get them a list of 20 things that their moon Saturn loves to do. And in that way, that when transits come to it, then they're looking and picking from their list as opposed to like letting the planets have their way with them.
I love that. So being prepared, being forewarned is forearmed, and then you can make different choices.
Yeah.
If you have a lot of difficulty every time those transits are coming around to you.
And I
Yeah.
think we could look at that as strategic planning, which astrologers do all the time with electional astrology. They'll plan for their wedding or the start of their business, and we could take it to a micro level and say you could be planning for the every transit to your chart. And so anyway, I
Oh,
think
okay. This is a good one. Vivian has transiting Saturn and Pisces sitting on her MC on the 10th house cusp. Help.
okay. Well, this is so fun, Celeste. I love your setup here and you got all your people here. That's so cool. Okay, so Saturn and Pisces. Do you want me to just go for it?
Yeah,
I don't want
yeah,
to
go
talk too much. Do you want to
for
try?
it.
Okay. Well, Saturn and Pisces on the midheaven, what would be the struggle there? Stress over the career, wondering what to do with your life, maybe feeling that the vibes aren't great in your career, dealing with emotional undercurrents of people in the crowd, things like that. So instead of letting the planet have its way with us, we want to say, what's our plan for Saturn on our midheaven, right? Like, what are we going to do with that energy? And I think persistent effort, working daily to clear out the emotional nits that happen with your crowd, or I don't know what this person does for a living, but, whatever you do for work, it's like you want to clear and cleanse that, over and over
I
daily
think
to make sure that
a
everyone,
writer. I
oh,
think,
she's a,
yeah.
okay. So that might be like working with the crowd. And I say that because Pisces is a global sign. It's a global emotional sign. So, saying that, you're working with your crowd to make sure everyone feels good every day. Do we all feel good? Like, is the vibe correct? Like, maybe if you have a Facebook with your crowd, you're like working that angle and like trying to make sure they all feel good and things. And so I think, you know, I, I think daily, not trudgery, but like committing to persistent effort on your career right now is the remedy for feeling thwarted there. Like, oh no, my career, what's happening? Well, I'm happening to it.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna just every day go after this. So that would be my thoughts on that.
Yeah, yeah. And being a writer, with how things have changed so much, it's like there may be a feeling of having to do some kind of pivot and not knowing exactly how to do that in order to monetize in a way that's sustainable. That's what I'm feeling like. Maybe there's an issue with making this sustainable.
Interesting.
It's something that's coming to me.
Nice.
Yeah, but I like how you're talking about, yeah, persistent effort, carving out time every day, despite any like oceanic feelings of like feeling adrift,
Yeah.
like doing some kind of commitment. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Do we want to try the Saturn over the IC, the opposite
Oh
there?
yes,
Okay.
please.
So, well, it's a similar vibe because it's Saturn and Pisces. So we're globally dealing with people's emotions and clearing out, vibes and making sure everyone's happy, which prayer is good for. Music is good for, anything vibe based, smells, incense, tones, colors, all these things. But Saturn in the IC would say it has to do with your home life or, what, how is the vibe around your house, or is everyone happy at home? We like, does everyone like what's going on in the home environment? So working out the nits there, making sure that the vibe is right there was what, how it would be different. What do you think, Celeste?
I like that. Yeah, and I love the idea of yeah, doing what you can to create a more peaceful environment in the home with if it's Saturn and Pisces, cultivating that peace in the home, however you want to do it, like with flowers, with cooking more at home, like more duties and responsibilities and intention and grounded practices at home.
Beautiful. Yeah, you
Yeah.
made me think of feng shui. Like that would be,
Yes.
yeah, feng shui in the home. Oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, or like with incense or like doing energetic moving
Yeah,
the
like
so
saging the home
yeah, saging
daily.
the home. Yeah,
you know yeah,
yeah.
and of course Saturn's going to be in Pisces for another year, so how do we deal with a long-standing transit? Let's say we have acute remedies which are for short transits, like Mars comes in, you get sick for 2 weeks. Okay, well, we might be able to take Advil for 2 weeks, but if Saturn's on your IC for a year, you can't really like take Advil for
Yeah.
that. So that's where we need to find sustainable things we can do for a year. Feng Shui, you can do for a whole year. You can study it, get all the mirrors in the right place, see how it feels like. And so, yeah, that's just a duration thing. Is like, and don't expect the transit to pass until it passes.
Mhm.
The idea that we're going to fix something overnight is not really honoring the clock that we watch, right?
Yeah.
It's time. It's like we're like looking at the qualitative clock of like, what time is it? I mean, it's time
Yeah.
to feng shui.
Yeah.
It's like, and that feng shui time goes on for another year. So, not every remedy is just like going to fix it right away, but it's
Mhm.
going to, it kind of
Mitigate
does
the
fix it though.
intensity. I think it mitigates the intensity, or like, because if you have Saturn at your IC, there is going to be some kind of tests or boundaries or restrictions with your family or your home, or like so many people with Saturn, like Pisces on the IC, like even just water problems at home,
Oh yeah.
there's
Yeah, and then your job as a remedy artist might be to know which plumber to call. I mean,
yes.
it's funny because people think, oh, you're just an astrology remedy person. I'm like, oh yeah, well, we deal with everything under the sun. We got plumbing problems, we got mom problems, like any problem that exists, we got this. So actually, getting better at being a remediation artist is kind of getting better at being a problem solver in some ways.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, and Zoom to the Stars loved your suggestion about movement and talk
Oh,
for the moon opposite Saturn
yeah.
in Sag.
Oh,
Yes.
good.
Okay. Okay, you got Pale Sala. Ah, we
People
got
always think like we should be able to remedy things right away. I always prep a chart and think, I'll be trying to relax the night before a chart reading. My autistic mind is still looking at the chart and thinking about remedies. And it's actually a big puzzle to solve. It's not that easy. For you and I to kind of develop that driving around in the car talking thing, it
Mhm.
took a little conversation. And, so, for anyone out there who wants to take up remedy, don't be too hard on yourself thinking you should just be able to look at a chart and know. in fact, that's what the textbook's written for is, let's say there's a Saturn moon. You can look at the Saturn page and then look at the moon page and write a paragraph for each, and then how do you marry those? It's like delineation can take time. These are all the things the Saturn needs. These are all the things the moon needs. Okay, now how do I put those together? And it takes a little time.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. And Vivian said, thank you so much. You spoke directly to her existential crisis. You nailed it. So you got that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what is the book? It's Astrological Remediation: A Guide for the Modern Practitioner.
Yeah. And I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes. Yeah.
Yeah. Just so
Yes.
everyone knows, we were at the Moyer Press School where I work. We read the book every Tuesday as a group. It's a reading group. So last week we got through 2 pages, but we do a lot of discussion, and we really basically it's a bunch of people learning astrological remediation and just going one step higher every week. So anyone's welcome at that group.
Tell people how do they sign up
They
for
would
that?
just go to my website, andreagehrz.com, and there's an
Okay.
events tab, and then you can find it's under the events tab.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah. Oh, and Pale Sala says feng shui time absolutely with Saturn at the IC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Celeste, can
Rosie.
I ask you a
Oh,
question?
yes, of course.
So you seem like a very astute astrologer. So I'm curious how you deal with hard aspects. Like, what is your style of that? I mean, I
Mhm.
heard you talk about grounding with Mars, but like, what in general, when you see a hard aspect, how do you approach that in the reading?
Yeah. Well, I like to give people the heads up that this is something's coming. Let's say, mm, like one of the more difficult ones can be like Pluto coming to your moon, let's say. And that what's preparing people for that, there is going to be things unearthed. Like, I feel like Pluto can be beautiful in that it's very uncomfortable. So just letting people know that something uncomfortable can be coming about dealing with and facing shadows of like childhood stuff. It can come from, your childhood stuff, your mother's stuff, your relationship stuff, but that these things are being brought up to the surface for a reason at this time because you're ready to emotionally process them for healing. Is that, I feel like that's the deeper purpose of Pluto. I mean, we get so scared seeing Pluto transits coming,
Yeah.
but it can be incredibly beautiful.
Yeah.
Right now, Pluto is trining my IC, and
Mm.
it has been just, I mean, stuff I feel like unearthed before I was conscious, like my early childhood. I think stuff is coming up, and
So
it's tough, but it's healthy to, yeah.
I
So
feel like
I
what
would, depending on
you're
the
doing
sign
there.
and stuff. Oh, go
Sorry,
ahead.
what you're doing there is a really great remedy, which is providing a positive narrative about whatever the energy is. So like whereas Pluto moon might be really intense, you're saying, and it's for a reason. Like
Yeah.
like I do that one a lot with clients. I'll be like, well, let's ask ourselves, why is this moon Mars in your chart? Like, why God? Why? Like, why did you create?
Yeah.
What is this for? And that's actually something that goes back to teleology, which is the philosophy upon which astrology was built. You know, this is one of the things I'm trying to get the Hellenistic astrologers to really know about is teleology, because it's the study of things becoming themselves and having a life purpose. So,
Can
um,
you spell that?
yeah, it's TELEOLOGY. There's actually an article on astro.com called An Introduction to Teleology for the Modern Astrologer.
Okay, I'm writing it here. TELEOLOGY.
LOGY.
Okay, I'll put it in the comments. Okay.
Okay, so the thing about teleology is it looks at things growing into themselves for a reason. Like, for example, let's say we saw a Moon Mars Pluto conjunction in Aries in the first house, and the kid keeps hitting people in class or something. Well, like punching people, and we're like, some people are like, this is a problem child, this is a bad kid. And the teleologist would say, what is growing here? A warrior! Oh my God, we're growing a warrior! Warriors don't grow in schools, they grow in martial arts studios. And they would pluck him out of the school and put him in the martial arts studio. I mean, the word Mars is in martial arts for a reason, right? Like,
Mhm.
so it's like, the point is like you were kind of doing that where you're saying this moon Mars Pluto is here for a reason, right? This Pluto transit you're about to go through is here for a reason. Like, and that is a remedy, I think.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yes. Yeah. I often tell people where I see like a lot of fire in the child's chart to put them into like they've got to be into something like martial arts or some kind of sport so that they can healthily process their energy rather than like putting that moon Mars and expecting them to sit in a classroom, 8 hours a day, just immobile. I mean, it's just not going to be easy for them.
Wow, you're really good. That's called symbolic substitution, where you get the person in the right context for what their chart wants to do, and then they can, it's like a plant. Teleologists would constantly compare people to plants, and they would say if a person's not growing or developing correctly, it's because they're not in the right environment. Like if you try to grow lettuce in the hot sun, it wilts. So some people are trying to grow, but they're dying inside, and then if it's a spicy pepper plant, it's got to grow in the hot blazing sun. So that's the same with people. They say that not all of us grow well in every environment, basically.
Exactly. This is why it's so, you know, steering back. I just want to bring it up for this like political thing. It's like this JD Vance. I think he's touching a nerve with people because he's trying to put everyone in the same soil, in the same box. You all have to like the childless cat lady thing. It's like if you don't do it this one way, then you're not doing it right, which is so antithetical to human beings, especially with Pluto and Aquarius right now, where I feel like and Uranus going into Gemini,
God.
more and more harnessing our own individuality, respecting other people for doing things their own way or having their own thought processes that are a little different and being interested in them even if you don't feel or think the same way. I feel like that's the greater collective call that we're going towards.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree with you. Like that's such a good point about the Pluto and Aquarius and how we are looking maybe collectively at well, yeah, I mean, yeah, and if I have anything to say about it, that will be happening because teleology will be everywhere. I mean, teleology is the study of things and people becoming themselves. Like that's why astrologers are teleologists. Is who else does that? We look at each person and we say like, but who are you exactly? Oh, you're a warrior spirit. Okay, we got you. We got you. We'll help you grow here. We're not going to judge you. We're going to celebrate you. Um, can I speak to
I
this?
love that your cat just came into the
Oh yeah. Well, he's got his own chart, and his chart likes to sit by my chart. Okay, so this guy's saying this morning I heard a Vedic astrologer talk about the chart of Bangladesh. I was so doom ridden and talked about karma, which was inevitably all through generations. It was horrific. Can I address that?
Yes,
I
please.
do. One of the reasons I wrote Remediation is I was actually mad at astrology at the whole field because they kept for manifestation theory. What we talk about is what occurs, right? Like if you, we don't want to be Pollyannas where we don't want to ignore hard transits coming, right? That's why I like that you acknowledge the Pluto Moon transit because you're being a technical data person and you're saying there is this thing coming, right? We don't want to be manifestors of doom either, and so I think what we talk about is really important. If we do talk about an aspect approaching, what I would say is that's why I teach my students, well, if you're going to talk about something hard in the future, you better have 10 remedies for it. For example, if we say, oh, when the Uranus Saturn conjunction happens, there's going to be an earthquake. Like, I'm sorry, but that's just bad astrology because it's not helpful. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, unless you're going to give 10 earthquake preparedness tips,
Yeah.
like that wasn't a great prediction because it wasn't useful. I mean, like maybe it's like, do I then not drive in my car? What do I do on this earthquake? And like, it might, so I think, remediation actually solves this whole problem is that we can adhere to the data that we see and be quite helpful and not be doomsday, So I think narrative building is the astrologer's job of like, yes, we see the clock ticking, and what narrative are we creating about that? And that's just
Yeah.
where I think remedies help people be happy astrologers,
Mm-hmm.
and so.
Yeah, well, there's going to be a symbolic earthquake within yourself. And I had this happen when Uranus came to my Saturn Sun conjunction. but Uranus moves so slow, so you feel it coming for a while. And I quit my corporate job. So like I earthquaked my life
Wow.
where I yeah, where I like
Wow,
tore the
you did.
structure down with
And that's such a good, I love that. I love that meaning based to look at transits to say like, and I love how you say an earthquake of the soul, but it's like why are earthquakes positive things, right? There's a lot of trauma that comes in earthquakes, and though they shake up structures that maybe need to fall down, let's say there's a building that's really dilapidated. It's like a cooling effect, of let's see how this is so controversial to even talk about. Like I'm it's a spicy pineapple topic. That's what we call them in the Moira Press. Like anything that's kind of a hot topic. But yeah, I think
why spicy pineapple?
well, it's something where no matter how you talk about it, you're not quite going to say the right thing. Yeah, like the tower card. Like it's hard to if you pull the tower on someone's future, it's like that's kind of a spicy pineapple. Like what do I say now? Like how do I talk about this? It's kind of a yeah. But some transits like the coming are spicy pineapples. Like you see like the Pluto Mars conjunction, or the Mars Uranus conjunction that just happened. Like that one, I'm like, how do I talk about this? Because it's gonna be. I mean, freaking Trump got shot in the ear. Like that was totally right on for that Mars Uranus transit. Like people say, well, was it staged? I'm like, well, it was staged right on time. Like I don't know, but I do think when you see something like that approaching, like how do you talk about like, well, guys, there's gonna be this really hard thing coming, and like it's like, is it any good way to really address this? I mean, they kill me. The hot potato topics.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, prescriptions can be issues. Okay, Mercurius says prescriptions can be issues if astrologers also create the issue with the prediction.
Okay, this is exactly what I was saying. Like Celeste. So I'm a little different than you. If I see a hard transit coming in a chart, I actually don't speak to it because I don't want to manifest anything hard in the future of the person. Now, I'm not saying you're making an error because I think you're like, especially if you're working with an astrologer who can already see their chart and they can see that Pluto coming. Like for you to not address it is kind of an error. Yeah, it really depends on the language of the receiver or what they can see in the chart too. So I think it really depends. But yeah, like if I just have a newbie person do astrology and they have Saturn come off of their Venus, like I don't even talk about it because I'm not trying to create a problem. Like I'm just like, but it's not that I don't see that data there. I see it. I just choose to maybe not manifest any of that by talking about it. That could be seen as an error. See how this is a hot potato topic? Because it's like I'm making
Yes,
like you could say that I'm making an error of omission and I'm being a Pollyanna. Like so I don't know.
Pollyanna is so in the energy because I have been a Pollyanna about all these upcoming really hard transits coming. Like, I just refuse to. I think I've tried to imagine that, Saturn and Neptune moving into Aries and Uranus moving into Gemini. It does, there can be, I mean, of course, there are going to be hard things coming. There are always hard things, but that there can be really constructive, positive changes that are coming for the collective, not necessarily a civil war number two, like, so
Well,
many people are worried.
it's that surgery thing you and I are talking about. Like there might be a soul surgery that happens, which might hurt in the moment, but a lot of healing will happen in any August 19th was supposed to be difficult, and Bear Rose is talking about that. Well, that was the T square, right? And like we
Yes.
were talking about the T square. Now I handled that by making a whole video on the T square 3 weeks before it happened, and basically offering remedies. Like I was like, you can fade it out, you can use a temperance approach, you can remedy it, or you can just do mega manifestation. Like I basically gave the audience like 4 options of how to walk through it. Like, but I did predict the T square, but I also really kind of offered a remedy approach to that. So did anything happen that was bad in my world on August 19th? I mean, I got in a few production fights, but like I'm a producer. Like, I mean, we don't see production fights as a bad thing. Where the team is just like, what do we do with this? How do we move that story over here? Like, so I don't know if fights are bad. I mean, that's where you get into, is a fight a bad thing? We don't know.
I
But
felt like it was, I felt like it was more specific to people whose charts were activated, more so than like the collective, like the people on that yacht that got suddenly hit by a tornado out of nowhere, that on for that full moon square Uranus. Yeah, they had a Uranian event, and other people had Uranian events in different ways, but it wasn't necessarily bad. It was
Right.
exciting, like the Democratic National Convention. There was a lot of excitement. The high vibe Uranus kind
Man,
of
you are really
energy.
good at this because excitement is a euphemism for like Uranus, bro. Like, like I had a tornado. Well, that was exciting. Like, that's like a euphemism so hard. But like, I think euphemisms exist for positive narrative making. We're not being polyamorous and pretending it didn't exist, but we're going to say, hey, there are some good things that come out of all these unexpected things. Like,
Mhm.
we're always, in some ways, looking at the best of a time period. I had a teacher at the school do a class on chaos, and she talked about how without chaos, humans are too static and they basically get stuck. And so we could say that Uranus exists for these unsticking moments. Like,
Yeah.
why did the gods create Uranus? Well, for a reason. Like, nothing is not for a reason.
Yeah, and there were a lot of protests around the convention. So there was a very different, there was the Uranian energy that popped in here and there to really remind people to don't forget about the what's going on in Gaza. That yeah,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
that the
that's
United States being a part of it. So
yeah, that's
that
true.
was kind of some of the Uranian energy, how that showed up, I feel like, at the convention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the next big transit we're looking at? Let's see. I have all these
Oh,
pictures drawn of
Uranus
transits coming
retrograde
up.
and Pluto retrograde happening on September 1st
Oh,
is a big one. I
okay.
think I think you, I think Mercury going direct could be a big
Oh,
one
yeah,
too.
that's something too. Yeah.
The 28th, August 28th. I think that's next Wednesday. That's when Mercury goes direct.
Okay. It's so funny. I hardly ever deal with Mercury problems because I'm always dealing with passionate Mars syndrome. Like, I'm always dealing with like the hardest charts you ever saw. Like, I'll have like violent couples who have Mars at the same degree. I'm like, the problem is both of you, like, at the same time. But yeah, so Mercury retrogrades often skip my radar because I'm dealing with these other. I don't specialize in Mars problems, but people rarely come in to me for like a communication issue.
Oh,
Although communication issues are a big one that we do remedy. For example, let's say we have a couple and one of them has a Mercury Saturn conjunction and they're very quiet, and then the other person has a Mercury Jupiter conjunction and they're very talkative. Like, see how that could be an issue?
yeah.
Because the Mercury Jupiter person they get overexpressed, and the Mercury Saturn person gets underexpressed, and then it creates an imbalance in the relationship, kind of thing. I do think Mercury's issues are a big one that astrologers can remedy. What would you
Hmm.
do with a Mercury Mars conjunction? What's the issue there?
Oh, that's like letting your mouth get ahead of you, or yeah, it would really depend on which signs,
Lots of
which signs.
swearing with that one, and yelling and
Yes,
swearing.
yeah,
I
hmm,
think they make great debaters.
yes,
Or people who get into fights for the greatest good of all concerned.
yeah. A journal is a really important thing for them. Like, put it on the page, maybe before you bring it up in conversation. You got to have a tough partner. If you've got Mercury Mars that can handle that
Yeah,
energy.
totally. Yeah, you're right. Zoom for the stars that to the stars are argumentative. You know, yeah. One time I had two students in my class that were astro twins, and they had Mercury Mars conjunctions. And I'm not breaking confidentiality. I'm not telling you who they were. I respect and love all my students, but they kept swearing at me. Both of them would swear and yell at me. And I was like, well, at least you're both doing it. Good job. Way to be twins. Proving astrology
What are your
is
big
correct.
three that you can handle people swearing
Well,
at you?
I have a Mercury square Mars, Celeste, so I just was like,
Oh,
oh,
you're like,
really?
you can handle it, no
Yeah.
problem.
I didn't have to tell them to toughen up, Cupcake, which I have to tell some people. No, I don't know. But no, I just, having a Pisces moon square Neptune allows me to really see everyone in as their chart.
Yeah.
I would be more upset if they weren't acting out their chart than if they were
Mm.
swearing at me. It's like, oh, okay, I see what's going on. Yvonne, that's so funny.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about Neptune. Yeah,
Oh,
Neptune can be so. I was talking to a client who was having Neptune transits, and it's just like,
yeah.
oh,
Okay, let's see about Neptune.
so nebulous. Like,
Okay,
how
let's
is it
see.
showing up?
Okay, let's see what Neptune problems are. Okay, so it says Neptune vibrations: diffuse, softening, gaseous, amorphous, magical, floating, dreamy, sleep-inducing, psychic, confusing. Um, Problematic presentations of Neptune: lies, confusion, allergies, sleepiness, alcoholism, syndromes, lack of resolution of the option for it, the feeling of being energetically compromised, feeling fatigue, psychic struggles, extreme sensitivity. So these are some of the Neptune issues of like, a big one is like, you have a vision of something and it doesn't really match with what the world sees of you, so there's like dysmorphias of just like, but I see this and you see this, and things like that. So what are some remedies? Let's see. Attaching a higher meaning to events in life, meditation, Reiki, aromatherapy, music, painting. A lot of times, let's say somebody's having dreams like on transits to their Neptune and they have these weird visions and visions and visions. Well, we might get them to paint their vision or draw their vision or sing a song about their vision or something where we're not looking for a linear response. We're looking for a very poetic thing out of that poetic transit. I don't know. What do you do for Neptune?
Well, there was other things going on, but I was talking to them about being mindful of deception.
Mm-hmm.
Of, really be careful. Don't click on that link, because you can see someone's like Facebook getting hacked, or yeah, or falling, like just like a scammer getting through, because they're just like kind of,
Yeah.
their senses aren't as sharp as they normally would be, and then afterwards they're like, how did I let this happen? That's like I feel like
Yes.
that's with the Neptune.
Well,
Just, it like brings your defenses down, so that you're not as prepared to, or not as recognizing potential deception as easily.
interesting. Well, so like, as AR specialists, we need to know what to do with deception. Like we have to figure out lies, how to remedy lies, and like it's like everything. But
Oh, I
no,
love that aura protection, Tracy
oh yeah,
says. Yeah.
that would be a good one. Yeah, so I think, really there, that brings up the idea, though. It really depends on what problem is presenting, because we have this big
Mm-hmm.
list of Neptune problems, but we just want to say, like, what is happening, in your
Mm-hmm.
life, and get some more information. And if we needed more specific information, we could go back to planetary trigger days and be like, do you remember what was happening last Thursday? And they're like, oh, my sister lied to me. And you're like, okay, now we're dealing with lies. Like, so yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, I love doing that. Going back. Well, what happened around this time?
Yeah.
Yeah, to kind of time their chart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this hour flew by. I could talk to you forever. You are what a fountain of
Well,
knowledge and expertise that you
you
are.
are
I love
wonderful. Like, I'm like, if I need a remedy, I'm going to Celeste, man. If I can't figure something out.
it. And I'm going to be coming to teach for your school in this fall. I've got to
Yes.
get you my
Well, I
thing.
need to talk to you about that, because we definitely want to have you at the Moyer Press School 100%.
Yeah.
We're kind of turning teachers more into making YouTube. So maybe we'll do something more like this at our school with you talking about what you do, or we can have you teach a class. I think you and I can create what we really want to do
Oh,
there.
let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could change it to whatever suits you
Well,
best.
we definitely
Let's
want
do it.
we want the crowd to be able to see and experience you, and I think, and especially after this conversation today, I was like, they definitely need to meet you. So I think having you over in a way where we can get you to the most people is like the really the question. And you and I can email that out. But
Yeah, let's do that.
all right,
That sounds wonderful. So it has been incredible talking to you. Tell people the name of your books again so that they can
just
see them.
Astrological Remediation: A Guide for the Modern Practitioner. Find us at the Moira Press. You can look up moirapress.com. It's MOIRA press.com, and come to school there. We have events and classes 7 days a week. So, and yeah,
Yeah,
we'd love to have anyone.
yeah.
Thank you, Celeste.
Thank you so much for coming, Andrea.
All right.
You have a great
All right.
weekend. And I'm going to put this, I'm going to put your information here, and then on YouTube, I'll cross post this to YouTube.
Beautiful. All
Okay.
right.
Have a
Thank you.
wonderful
All
weekend.
right. You too. Bye.
Bye.